and the William Golding, Jane Austen man at the back.
I didn't mention William Golding, but anyway, it doesn't matter. Overnight, I've been reading a few passages. Well, not overnight, I did have a sleep one stage. And came from Swift, through some later political writers, up to, what's his name again? Oh yeah, Matthew Parris was the one that I entered. The Fall of Mrs. Thatcher. And it struck me that if you take, for example, well, I read the Orwell first, The Execution in Burma, where he speaks of the destruction of an individual world with the destruction of the human being, brings in the incidentals of the dog and the puddle. And it makes you think of Dostoevsky and the thing in Karamazov about evil to one person being equivalent to evil to the whole world and so on. And then you go back to Swift with The Execution in Brobdingnag, where he treats the whole thing with an enormous levity and lightness of touch. Although it's written on his gravestone that he's lying where savage indignation can lacerate his heart no more, he seems to treat the things with a lightness of touch, so that the intensity of the expression of human outrage at other human suffering seems to have developed and strengthened throughout the centuries. And yet at the moment, the most enormous sufferings have occurred within the last, say, 15 years. I don't need to name what they are: hundreds and hundreds of thousands of deaths, burning by phosphorus bombs, torture and so on. And yet, within the context of the political novel, these seem to be almost an irrelevance. And I wonder whether anybody might feel that there was something rather odd about this, that it's perhaps a paradox.
I'm not going to ask the panel to comment on that yet. I'm going to ask them, because I think that's the key question. Where is the political novel of our own age? I will ask the panel to comment on right at the end. Now, do we have any more questions? Looking around, yes. Sarah.
Does the panel think that political writing started hundreds of years ago, perhaps in Elizabethan times, when ladies used to put coded messages into tapestries?
Any thoughts? Because although Shakespeare wrote about big political stories, I've never thought of Shakespeare as a political dramatist, though I should probably be shocked.
I certainly do, yes. I mean, I've been revisiting the Henry IV plays, and I think the thing, and again, this is the issue about a politics you disagree with. I'm so bored and uninterested and unengaged by all this stuff about sort of kingship and what makes a great monarch, which a lot of those sort of Henry plays are engaged with. And yet, actually, what you see is that Shakespeare is so subversive because he gives us the the speeches about this is how a king ought to be, this is what politics is. But actually, the person that we really love is full stuff. And Shakespeare's so clever because he can make us, he can make us love both. He tells us one thing, but he shows us another. The funny thing is, I read all those plays when I was at school and found them unutterably boring. And actually, when I realised the game that Shakespeare was playing with us, I was just overawed by his, sorry, that was sort of genius.
And he was seen, wasn't he, as in his own time, Richard II was staged, I believe, as a way of evoking, supporting the Leicester's rebellion, wasn't it, in 1500 it was. So he was seen as a political writer.
Yes, certainly those plays.
We're going to have two more, unless anybody had anything further to contribute on that. There's a lady in black at the front, and then there's a gentleman in blue check there, and I think that we'll end it there. So, go ahead.
You mentioned the Shakespeare plays. Well, the most political, really, is Julius Caesar, which we happened to see 2 nights at Stratford before coming on to here. And if you read that, you've got politics from all its sides. The protagonists, the conspirators, the anti-conspirators, and how they all wonder how in future years other people will react to their situation. Taking action, not having enough forethought, and and in the end, disaster and chaos all round. It is the most political play of all time.
Robert McCrum almost let Graham Greene slip in. Was that a mistake or actually a very important character in this whole story?
Well, he was very, he was although you can't, just to recognise very quickly, I can't think of a book of his which is overburdened, but he was steeped in politics, of course.
The comedians who married the glory.
Yes. And they were all inspired by real political happenings. And actually quite American, of course. I mean, once you start thinking about it, it kind of starts to play, isn't it? But yeah, he was he of course was friends with, or knew Orwell slightly.